Hello, everyone, and welcome to the webinar, Top-Notch Tools, Tips, and Tricks for Library Success with infoDOCKET editor Gary Price. Before we get started, we'd like to take a moment to ask you about yourselves. So let's get started. My name is Elizabeth Leonard, and I'm a librarian and the Executive Market Research Manager at SAGE. I'm delighted to introduce our speaker, Gary Price. Gary is the founder and editor of infoDOCKET, which is updated 7 days a week with new online search tools, library and research news, and commentary. Each entry is also tweeted at infoDOCKET. Gary lives near Washington, D.C., and grew up in the Chicago suburbs. He was recently announced as the new managing editor of NISO's Information Standards Quarterly and is a consultant to the Global Investigative Journalism Network. Gary is also the recipient of the Special Library Association's Innovation and Technology Award and is the SLA News Division's Agnes Hennebree Roll of Honor Award. He was also awarded the Alumni of the Year Award from Wayne State's Library and Information Program. This one-hour webinar will be recorded and archived for future viewing. We'll be sending out a link to view it and access to the slides to all registrants in the next coming weeks. If you have any audio or visual problems during the webinar, please use the Q&A box at the bottom right of your screen, and one of our team members will help you. At the end of the webinar, we'll have about 20 minutes of time for Q&A. So please also use that chat box to ask any questions that you'd like to pose of Gary towards the end of the program, but do feel free to chat those in at any time. Also take note of the webinar hashtag #SageTalks, and tweet out any questions or comments you have there as well. And you can also add @Sage_news. Without further ado, let's get started with our first question for Gary. And Gary, if you could tell us, what do you see as the biggest trends for librarians, and what websites do you then recommend for them?
Good morning and afternoon, everyone. Just clear my voice. And hello from just outside of Washington, D.C. Thank you for this opportunity to chat with you. A lot to get to and not a lot of time. Perhaps the biggest trend I see for 2015 is a growing interest in library privacy. In my view, to this point, privacy in the digital age libraries, from libraries, has not been given the same amount of concern by all of us in the profession as it has been in the past in the print world, and this, in my view, needs to change. Basically, everything you do online is being looked at, and in my view, we don't do a very good job of informing our users about actually what's going on. We are not as transparent as we want others to be. And again, this needs to change. I'm not saying that we need to get rid of services, that type of thing. But we need to, one, become aware ourselves of what's going on, and then to educate our users about possible issues they might have. I've learned over the last couple of years that privacy is a very personal thing. And everybody has a different level of comfort. That's why the library can and should also be a place to get information about all types of internet privacy, whether it be directly or indirectly involving the library. On the first slide here I have for you, I want to share a tool with you. One is precisely where you're coming in from, your IP address. And over the last many years, we've seen a growing interest in what's called geo-IP, actually mapping an internet address, IP address, to a specific location on the earth. In this case, IP location, which is the website you're seeing right now, actually takes the services of 5 or 6 different geo-IP databases and puts all of them on one page. This is far from a perfect science, but in some cases, where you're actually sitting in a given moment in time can be known by who's ever on the other end if they are using one of these services. And believe me, all of the major data providers and online services are using these types of services. So as you can see, for example, in the slide is near the bottom, you can see that not only is the IP address known and that the IP address is in the District of Columbia, but that specific IP address is associated with a specific location. In this case, the address 12.170.153.5 is correctly associated with the lobby of a hotel here in Washington, the legendary Renaissance Mayflower. So again, we can, the person on the other end can actually, in some cases, identify where the person is sitting or was sitting. And by the way, when it comes to privacy, it's not only privacy from businesses, but also gets into privacy in government surveillance. And again, this is something that we need to both understand the scope of, understand what's possible, and then make adjustments if necessary, and also educate our users. One example of this also, in terms of privacy, that came along and was of interest to me over the last 5 years, came about 4 or 5 years ago when Overdrive and Amazon announced a relationship together. And by no means have I ever said that this relationship should end. My point has always been, we need to educate our users that when they borrow a book from Overdrive and they put it on their Amazon Kindle, that Amazon, a third party, now has access to what they're borrowing from the library, which is in many ways absolutely against what we're not guaranteeing the reader privacy that we've had in the print age, and it's actually enumerated and listed in the ALA ethics statement. So again, it's about understanding and awareness and being as transparent as possible. And by the way, if the Amazon Overdrive is an issue for some people, with the proper education, not much, they can learn how to remove that borrowing information, that what you borrowed information from the Amazon servers. Here's another service that I think also is of value on a bunch of different levels, and it's called Just Delete Me. As you can see on this slide, Just Delete Me tracks a lot of different online services, and with 1 or 2 clicks, rates the service in terms of how easy it is to get your data off of the service. For example, you can see that services like Adobe and Amazon are rated as hard versus a service like Amara or App.net being easy. The point here is directions are given and services are rated. And it explains, again, how to remove your data from these particular services in a permanent manner. I should also mention down at the bottom of the slide, I've given you another URL service that you might want to know about, which brings up a whole other issue that we could spend hours discussing, and that is, what does deleted actually mean in the web age? And this comes up all the time. In the case of the resource I'm sharing with you today, I think it'll be of great interest for those of you who do news research or congressional government types of research. It's called Pilot Whoops, and it's not only available here in the United States, but across a wide variety of countries. What this service does is actually tracks and resurrects the deleted tweets of government officials in a number of countries. So, for example, let's say a senator here in the United States tweets something at 12:11 p.m. He or she might have tweeted something in error, of course, but also we've often seen politicians say things that they want to take back. In this case, if they take it back, they want to delete the tweet, let's say 5 minutes later or a week later, they can do that, but Pilot Whoops will catch it and bring the tweet back that you can actually find in the Pilot Whoops database. In addition to that, Pilot Whoops, their database is crawled by Google. So in reality, the tweet is really never deleted offline. I often hear from people saying, well, if I remove the link from Google, then it's gone. And in reality, that's not true, because just because the link doesn't exist in Google doesn't mean it doesn't exist in other search engines and in other services like the Wayback Machine and other cached. And somebody might have, in just a short amount of time, taken that information, made their own personal copy, for example, a PDF, or might have taken a screenshot of it. So what deleted means and what we tell people about what deleted means is something that we need to be looking at, understanding, and explaining.
Yeah, that's a good example.
So we'll move on.
In this case, Pilot Whoops is a good one to help us, but that there are other instances where maybe our users need to be continually informed about what's retained about them. So it's both good and bad, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Gary, I'm going to change track here for us, and it's because you are so incredibly informed. I wonder if you can tell us, what are some free resources that you recommend for research?
Sure. Let's get started. Let's take a look at the first one here. Just lost my place. Yes, here we go. BASE. This is one of the great resources on the open web for scholarly information. I think at this point they have over 70 million citations. What they're doing is crawling a variety of different services, including institutional repositories of open access material around the world. It's an incredibly robust search tool. If you're looking and you want to limit just to open access, aka free material, you can do that as well. You can do all sorts of fielded searching. There is a very robust advanced search interface. And remember, also I should point out that at the bottom of each citation, you can go to a more detailed view. You can email the citation. You can export the record into your favorite reference manager, and so forth. And again, access to BASE, which comes out of a university in Germany, is completely free. And I should also say, thank you, Elizabeth, for saying I'm very well informed. It's like BASE that helped me be very well informed, because I can actually, like many other search tools, I can set up a keyword or a very robust keyword, advanced keyword search or title search in a tool like BASE, and then set up an RSS feed, and as new results that match my search query appear, I am immediately notified of those results. And we can see on the next slide, again, some of that advanced search interface. You can limit the different types of materials. You can limit by year. And in some cases, too, they have automatic, they have software that will automatically try to classify a citation. This is an incredibly robust search tool. You can even do some browsing, as you can see up at the top on one of the tabs. So in terms of a free resource to search open access material and other material from fee-based journals, I highly recommend taking a look at BASE, spending some time with it, and creating some searches, then taking the RSS feed and using it as an alerting tool. So that's what BASE is all about from Bielefeld University in Germany. And we'll move on to the next resource. This one has been around now for several years, and unfortunately, for the library community, fortunately for me today, it's something for me to share with you, but I don't think this resource gets the attention that it deserves in our community. Think of Wolfram Alpha as an incredibly robust, very powerful mathematical calculator. It comes from the same people who bring us Mathematica, which is the go-to software for people doing mathematics. And on top of the calculator portion of it, think of it as a very powerful and current almanac. In addition to that, it actually will organize your results for you. So for example, here I did a search for Los Angeles, Toronto, and Seattle. So we first go through the results, and it will do entity resolution. Do I mean Los Angeles, the city, the NBA team, the Major League Baseball team, the Dodgers? Do I mean Toronto as the Blue Jays, or do I mean it as as their basketball team, the Raptors, and so on and so forth? Then, so I'm assuming that it is a city, and then in one nice package, it brings a bunch of different factual items about that particular location into a nice, very robust and full results page with population, urban population, metro population, so on and so forth. This is just one of the thousands of different fact categories that you can find in Wolfram Alpha. Everything from NFL statistics to dates that a specific event happened on. All that type of information is available in Wolfram Alpha. Here, for example, something that people are always looking for is historic weather information. So, for example, here I typed in weather in Los Angeles, January 6, 1986. I get the information. I get the date, the highs and lows. I get the chart. And I should say, I don't know if you can see it on this actual screenshot, but at the bottom of every Wolfram Alpha results page are some of the sources that they actually captured and are using to provide this result to you. Wolfram Alpha comes out of Champaign, Illinois, and I know for a fact that some of the library and information science students and the like at University of Illinois help with this particular resource. So in terms of again, calculator, very powerful, way beyond my pay grade, and almanac, fact book, Wolfram Alpha is absolutely a resource that you should know about, use, and share with others. You'll be amazed at what you find in here.
I do love that it has the sources listed at the bottom. I think it's an amazing addition, I think. So,
I really like that they list the sources at the bottom, because that's something that unfortunately a lot of other search tools don't do, and that's something that the credibility of the source is something that we need to pay close attention to.
And I should add, in case anyone joins late, we are going to have this live and the webinar available a couple weeks after this day, and that will include all of the URLs in the slide. So if anyone missed anything, it's coming. So let's switch topics again, and this time if you could talk about some databases that have free multimedia.
Absolutely. The first one that we're going to list here might be, if I could only have one database on my desert island, assuming my desert island had Wi-Fi, and why would I be stranded there perhaps, but if I could only have one research tool, one database, something that I just think is amazing, I probably would put this one at the very top of the list. and would be the one that I would want. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the C-SPAN video library, and I'm sure all of you are familiar with C-SPAN, which is not only congressional hearings and floor debate, but also just an incredible treasure chest back 20 or 30 years now of author interviews, political rallies here in Washington and around the world, forums, seminars, you name it, they've covered it. What the C-SPAN video library does, and I should say does for free, let me underline that, does for free, is basically provide you with keyword searchable access to just about everything that has ever aired on C-SPAN, along with the metadata and other material to help you find what you're looking for. So the C-SPAN video library can be found at the very top. Access to it can be found at the very top of the C-SPAN homepage. You can search all, you can search just videos. You want to limit the mentions of people or mentions of specific bills in Congress, you can do that as well. So we'll pretend to run a search, and we'll click. And I ran a search for the president and former CEO of Google, Eric Schmidt. And as you can see here, there are 60 results. Now, for example, I could find everything for Eric by just clicking on one person, but in a succinct manner. But here you can see some of the material that is available in the C-SPAN video library. So, for example, the first result of the 60 comes from a surveillance and national security forum where he spoke at. I guess we could all tie this back to the privacy issue as well. And let's click on that and go to our next slide. And you can see and get a better close-up view of it. You can also see how you can refine your search by adding terms, tags, that type of thing. So there are a number of field options here as well. It takes a little bit of getting used to, but you can turn this in again to a very powerful search tool. So once you click again on a specific result, you can actually see, one, the video, click, and the video would start playing. Two, you can see below the video box, you can see the transcript. That's right, and you can search on the transcript. Just a huge amount of material. I can't say everything in this database, but a large amount of material in this database, the C-SPAN video library, has a text transcript associated with it that you can search. In other words, every word spoken can be searched here. The transcripts are not created by humans. They're created by using the closed captioning associated with the video. You can also then, on the left side below the search box, you can see other people who are part of the video presentation. You can see who hosted the event and that's hyperlinked. And let me also point out one other feature, that directly below the search box, you'll see a pair of scissors, an icon for scissors. That icon allows you to create a custom clip. So let's say you want to create a clip of Eric Schmidt speaking at the conference, and you want to create him speaking what he had to say between 3 minutes and 35 seconds and 4 minutes and 20 seconds. You can click on that button, pull the levers to that specific time frame, give the custom clip a title, and they will host it for you on the C-SPAN website for free. So that, in my view, is one of the great free, on top of it, research tools out there. From this point forward, students and others of it, with an interest in U.S. history, in a specific author, don't just have to read what was said, but they can actually watch it. Oh, by the way, in some cases, some of the material on the C-SPAN video archive can be embedded. The congressional material can often be embedded, but other material can't. But the C-SPAN video library is an incredible resource. Let me also point out that the people who bring us the Wayback Machine and many other resources the Internet Archive in San Francisco also have a video archive available that is allowing you to search a huge amount of material, again, using the closed captioning from US TV news shows going back a couple of years, back to 2009. The search tool leaves a little bit to be desired, and because of copyright issues, you can only view 30 seconds of the video at a time. So if, for example, you want to watch a 2-minute, you would have to, a 2-minute video, you would have to click 4 times. But it's easily done. And also, a tool like this might also be useful for trying to place an event in time. And in some cases, just knowing that the video is there, you could, and for example, it aired on NBC News, you can then go to another search tool and actually find the video and watch it there. But my overall point here is that the multimedia material that all of us wanted to become available is rapidly becoming available online. And there's a huge, I believe, increase not only happening, but a need to make sure that these resources are understood, known, because unfortunately sometimes if they're not, something doesn't appear on the first few results of a Google results page, it's invisible to a lot of people. That's why, in my view, and I've been saying this for now more than a decade, knowledge of these specific resources and tools is key in creating basically a virtual bookshelf, a virtual reference shelf, or going to the right tool at the right time can often increase productivity and get the job done in a much more expedited manner. And that's about it for the TV News Archive. We can move on to the next resource.
Well, you're going to actually get a chance to take a break with your voice, although my eyes at the moment are drawn to this huge bottle of ketchup that's on the bottom left of the screen. But take a break for a second, Gary. Gary and I, a couple weeks ago, were talking about what are the sources that librarians are still regularly using. So we'd like to ask you, what resources of these do you use? Okay, I'm going to give you just a couple more seconds. Okay, so Library Journal is 68%, Info Today 36%, and then infoDOCKET is 21%. I would encourage you all to get the RSS feed, if you still do, for infoDOCKET. And if there are other sources that we didn't add to this list, do put them in the chat window, because I think Gary and I would both be really interested to know where else you are regularly looking for news. All right, so Gary, let's move it back to you. And if you can now talk through how to keep track of open web resources if you're a librarian.
And I'll do that in just a matter of minutes. I want to take this a little bit different. I will share with you in a moment some of my favorite out-of-the-way resources. But one of the tools that I wanted to mention that if you don't know about yet, I want you to know about, and we can hopefully do a presentation just on this one particular tool, You know, it's one thing to find all these great resources and to get them, but one, how do you get them? And two, how can you share them? This one particular tool, Ifttt.com, is free. It's available both on the web and there's a nice app for it as well. This is one of the key tools that I use. This allows me to take RSS feeds and all sorts of other information and have it appear where I want it to appear. So for example, so basically I should say, I'll use the expression I often use with others, and that is Ifttt, which stands, by the way, for if this then that, which is a computer science term, some of you know. This allows you to take disparate web services and mash them together. So for people like me, I'm not a developer, I can, this is Mashup for Dummies. So for example, I could take the RSS feed for infoDOCKET, and thank you, Elizabeth, I hope people do, or read our tweets, whatever. But you can take the RSS feed, and, well, I wanted to automatically take that RSS feed, and I want it to go directly to a web service like Instapaper, where then I can have all of my results, all of my headlines in one place. I can archive them. I could have them go directly to Evernote, another wonderful service that's also free. I can take, or heck, I could even say, well, when I'm sharing material, I can have my own RSS feed and have that RSS feed go to everybody I want to send it to via email. So Ifttt, again, takes disparate web services or tools like RSS and merges them all together and matches them up one against each other by just pointing and clicking. And as I said, this is also a free service. We could spend an entire presentation, let alone a couple-day seminar, learning what you can do with Ifttt. It's also, I should say, it's also used a lot by a lot of people for backing things up. As we know in the web age and the internet age and the computer age, backing up is vitally important. So that's Ifttt.com. I also want to mention another service from a resource I'm sure most of you are already very familiar with, the Wayback Machine. While we all know that the Wayback Machine is a vital resource that cannot at this point be keyword searched, one feature of the Wayback Machine that often goes unnoticed and unused is located on the lower right side of the Wayback Machine homepage, where it says Save Page Now. Basically, with this, pretty simple, you can take any URL of a web page that can be crawled. Obviously, if it's password protected or blocked, it can't be crawled. But I should also say this does work to not only archive web pages, but also archive PDFs. So what you can do here is take the URL of any web page or any PDF, paste it right into the Save Page Now box, click Save Page, excuse me, it's cold. Click Save Page, and we'll do that now, virtually, I guess. And you will now be instantly sending the Wayback Machine crawler to that specific page or PDF at that exact moment and have the page archived immediately. And then, as you can see here, you will be given a customized URL for that particular page at that particular moment. And then that particular URL is an archive version of the page is added to all the other archive versions of the page that the Wayback Machine has. But we do know how ephemeral the web is, and you want to make sure that the version that you're seeing is available in the Wayback Machine for you, and this is also helping out the entire community and available for others. Well, now you can control when the Wayback Machine crawler comes and archives a web page or PDF. And this, by the way, like everything else from the Internet Archive, is free. I should also mention, if I have just a quick second, that the Internet Archive also has a fee-based program called Archive-It, archive-it.com. And they work with a lot of universities, schools, government agencies, and many of the targeted collections in Archive-It are publicly accessible and keyword searchable. And we'll make sure to add Archive-It to the page of resources we send out. Now, one of the things that I'm often looking for in preparing infoDOCKET, but would apply no matter what I would be researching, whether it be library database news for infoDOCKET or whatever, are out-of-the-way resources. And here are 3 tools to help you with that. One is the European Media Monitor, which comes out of the EU. It's actually part of a research project, a research lab. They monitor news across a lot of resources, both sources that you know of and sources that you might not be aware of. The site is constantly updated, and the results are presented in a variety of ways. They also, obviously, because it's the EU, have material in a lot of in a variety of languages, not just English. And I have found this to be a great place to find resources and articles and materials that I don't see elsewhere. Also, 2 other services, one called Owler, which is very useful for business information across, again, the entire spectrum of business. This is both a web page, a web resource, and I often use Owler as I use their web app for iOS, but I often find trade publications and trade websites that I don't see elsewhere. And trade publications are often a great source of information for whatever you're looking for. They often have news early in the news cycle, and you will often see companies and stories mentioned in trade press long before they might make whatever you consider the mainstream press or the mainstream online press. Finally, another service that actually involves humans, and that is called Smart Briefs. They're a company here in Washington. Their service is available to researchers for free. They employ humans to take both trade press and mainstream articles. In some cases, abstract them. In other cases, just discover and discover the link, and they put them together daily in a variety of newsletters, all of which are free for just signing up for them. And again, I often find a lot of material that for example, new websites in a particular industry, I will see them mentioned here before I see them mentioned anywhere else. Oh, one other final note. Back up to European News Monitor. In addition to the actual site for the news, they maintain a wonderful directory of all of the underlying resources they make available inside of the database, which can be an excellent collection development tool.
Great tip. I'm going to move us to a completely different topic, though, which is, I think often when people think about searching, they're thinking about typing and they're thinking about text. But there are new ways of searching that I think are really interesting. Can you talk about some of those?
Sure. One of my favorite ones over the past year, and probably the one that many of you will leave and go and show to others, is PhotoMath. PhotoMath is a free app, and this is the idea of taking the mobile device, in this case the Android device, the iPhone, your Amazon Fire tablet, your Windows phone, and turning it into an actual search and information tool itself, and not just text. This is actually using the camera to search for information, or in this case, search for an answer. Basically, PhotoMath allows the user to take a picture of an algebraic equation, snap the picture, open it in PhotoMath, and instantly a result is provided to the user. In addition to the result, the user will also see step by step how that result came to be, all the intermediate steps to find the result. So back when you were in school, it shows your work. It shows the work involved in solving the equation. I have used this both from taking a picture of an equation from a printed book, but I believe it also works fairly well from when you take a picture of an equation off of a web browser, from a well-lit web browser screen. The other resource I wanted to mention here is kind of a variation on this theme, and allows the researcher, the user, to use their camera to search for information. And this tool is called CamFind. It's a free app. Basically, you point and click the next slide there, Elizabeth, allows you to click the camera, take a picture. For example, you can see in this screenshot, they're taking a picture just of a corner of a car, right from below the headlight to part of the tire. They get the bumper in there, and from that, they can determine that this is a 1969 Ford Mustang. So, and then it will actually run that search for you on a web search engine. The application here are great. I can say too that when it comes to celebrities, I've actually used this to see if it works, and it did, by pointing my camera at the TV screen. Seth Meyers was on this program, and it was able to identify Seth Meyers. So we can also kind of go into the future and think about what this might mean, not only for information retrieval, but also for privacy. CamFind is a free resource, and they continue to get money to develop their project. I believe in the last 6 months or so, I've seen a couple of stories about them getting some new venture capital funding. But this has been around for a while. And you can also, as it says there in the screenshot, you can actually translate your searches into a bunch of different languages as well. So this is another app that's not only interesting, but also might give us a glimpse of how the mobile device itself becomes a search tool, continues to become a search tool, and like PhotoMath, it's also free.
And I love that it goes into multiple languages. I wish that more things did.
Absolutely.
I'm going to have one more question for you, but before I ask it, I just want to remind the audience that we will have time for Q&A. So if you've got questions or comments for Gary, if you can enter them into the chat box or the question box in the bottom right of your screen. My last thing for you is, I think that when we were first talking about your recommended sites, had one that didn't fit well into any of the categories. So here's our anything else one resource left, and it is
Twerker. And by the way, I should tell everybody, lots of people, when I've mentioned this, always get on to me about, is Gary just quite the twerker dancer? No, I'm not. I think one of the biggest issues that we didn't really touch on at all today, but perhaps we can touch on in the future, and I often talk about it in infoDOCKET, is information credibility. And for those of you who either like to have a little bit of fun with friends and family, or perhaps more professionally, like to are training people doing digital information literacy, this is a tool you might want to know about. Twerker is an app. I believe it's available. It is available, I know, for iPhone. I'm not sure for Android at this point. But basically, this allows you to use your mobile device, open the app, grab a web page. In this case, you can see in the screenshot, I grabbed the page from the San Francisco Observer. You can see that the original headline says something like Senate key votes. And just by pointing and clicking, you can change the text into the same fonts used on the actual web page. You can change out the images, and basically you can create a very realistic version of a web page with incorrect information in a matter of seconds. Same fonts, same headings, and so forth. So for those of you who want to actually try to get people to understand how easily web information can change, this is a tool that I think you should know about, and is easily used, easily understood, and it's free. So it's fun, but also it's fun, but also very seriously. It can also be very educational.
It is scary and fun at the same time, isn't it?
Yes, and I really believe that I have a son who will be turning 3 soon. I think credibility of information and understanding what can be credible, what is credible, is going to be one of the most important things that I try to teach him and school tries to teach him as he moves on into school in the next few years. Anybody can say anything these days, and with the push of a button, and basically that's it, it can go global, in many cases viral, in a matter of seconds. And I think that the library profession can play a huge, huge and important role in this, in teaching people, in informing them, in keeping people current about what can happen moving forward, just like we should be doing with privacy.
Okay, so we're going to open this up then for questions and answers from you, Gary. And just so you know, when we asked if there were other resources that people got their information from, they said full text reports, Google News, and Twitter.
Text reports, that's a site that's now run by my very good friend, neighbor, and colleague, Cheryl Kennedy. And that's one that I started with her several years ago, and now she runs on her own. And I try to include many full text reports on infoDOCKET. I just included one today with new statistics about higher education here in the United States and the amount of college graduates. But for even more, I highly recommend, in the highest terms possible, strongest terms possible, full text reports. So that's very good to hear.
Someone commented when you were talking about Overdrive that it's just been bought by a Japanese peer to Amazon. Do you think anything is going to change because of that? Do you think privacy will be any different?
I think as privacy becomes more of an issue, which I wish it would have been several years ago, we'll have to see. I don't think anything will happen right away. One question that a lot of people are asking, including myself, is will the relationship between Overdrive and Amazon change? Will Rakuten, the new Japanese-based company that just bought Overdrive, want to end the relationship with Amazon? Will publishers even go for that? Because right now, obviously, publishers have a say in how the whole ecosystem works to some degree. But we'll see what if Rakuten wants to try to capture that same traffic itself, because, as many of you know, Rakuten, the new owner of Overdrive, also owns Kobo. So will they want to make Kobo the browser that provides access to the materials that you can get from a library, that type of thing? But obviously, with a commercial entity involved, I don't think it's different than any other situation. But we really need to be we really need to be aware, which is what I've said now several times, and watch closely. And I'm hoping that this current interest in privacy continues and people become aware of what's actually going on. Because remember, too, Rakuten also owns a bunch of other online shopping services. In addition to Kobo for ebooks, they own a bunch of others.
Thank you. Okay, we've got another question for you, which is, what's the difference between archiving sites in the Wayback Machine and just screenshotting?
Well, obviously, the Wayback Machine has millions and millions of more pages. Really nothing. My reason is sometimes screenshots and other files that you have on your own computer can get lost, can get corrupted, et cetera, et cetera. My advice, and something that I do, is make multiple copies of, for example, of a PDF. I might put one up on the Wayback Machine. I also might make a personal copy for myself, save one in Evernote. That's how it works. Also, I guess trying to be a good researcher and a good citizen out there, making the Wayback Machine as complete as possible is also a good thing to do. But in terms of actually screenshotting something and making a a permanent copy on Wayback is really no different. Of course, as I said, your computer can get corrupted, can get stolen, whatever, while Wayback Machine obviously is backing everything up, so on and so forth. So we'll see. I mean, we won't see. That's just the way it works. So really no difference.
I guess the other thing I'd add to that is that some pages can be really long, and that can be a whole heck of a lot of screenshots for any single page. And so you get the full experience if you're using any sort of an archiving site rather than screenshotting. Someone wanted to know, if you're interested in languages, have you tried the WordLens app? I think I said that I love the idea of anything that's got multiple languages to it. My answer is no, I haven't heard of that one and appreciate the tip. But Gary, have you used WordLens app?
I love the WordLens app. I have been using it for years. The only problem is, I'm checking as I'm talking here. Well, yeah, it seems to be available now. When I tried to get it the other day, it wasn't. WordLens is an amazing, amazing app. And obviously, I could, if I had a longer time to speak today, I probably would have included it. WordLens allows you basically to point your camera at a piece of text and, get this, without having to be online, allows you to do a dynamic translation of it from English to French, English to Italian, French to English, that type of thing. It used to be a fee-based app, but for those of you who don't know, WordLens was purchased by a company called Google a couple of years ago, and now it's completely free. It just, as I can see, was updated on March 19th with some stability improvements, and I appreciate whoever asked that question for mentioning it. Yes, WordLens is absolutely something I would take a look at. It is more than deserving of mention in this particular presentation, and is also, again, another example of the camera being used to actually present information and get information. So it's called, but what I can see now, by the way, I should mention, is now it is no longer, let's see, it might have been changed name to Google Translate. It might be now part of the Google Translate app. Not sure. But if WordLens isn't available, again, I will finish my research to see if it is or it is not available, and we'll include that on the presentation handout for today. I believe it is now part of the Google Translate app, because I'm seeing it both in Android and in iOS. I'm seeing the same types of images that I just pointed out, holding the camera up live to something and having it translate on the fly.
Okay. You had mentioned when we were on this slide that keeping track of resources in your library with the European Media Monitor, Owler, and Smart Briefs, that one of these, I think it was one of these, that you said was really good for collection development. Can you remind us which one of these it was, or if there was another one that you were talking about?
No, thank you. I was mentioning the European Media Monitor, and again, on the handout or the email that we send out with all of the links for today's presentation, I will call that specific link out of all the underlying news resources that are available from the European Media Monitor.
Okay, let me see if I can move it back. And you're saying you're not going to twerk for us?
I am not going to twerk for you. I can virtually twerk in my mind, and maybe you can program into it and see me twerking, but it's not pretty. I wouldn't want to ruin your lunch or your dinner, or maybe even your breakfast tomorrow. Not to mention your sleep.
Okay, so an academic business librarian wrote in, and I'm just going to read it out. I am always on the lookout for ways to help undergraduate students understand about the need to question any and all data information analysis that they come across on the free web. Twerker is a great example to show them. Do you have any others?
I know there are a bunch of tools that you probably can track down, and it's good. Maybe this will be the motivation to do it. But I've seen a variety of tools that make it very easy to copy. And of course, you can do this by just copying a web page and changing out some of the information. But I'm trying to figure out what they're actually looking for here. Elizabeth, can you maybe help steer me very quickly?
Yeah, so I think it's anything that might help a student understand that they shouldn't trust everything that they see. And so often when I was teaching, I used things like The Onion, because I think sometimes people don't understand that satire isn't necessarily real. So I think there can be a really wide range of things that you use to try to get them to question. But are there other examples that let people easily just manipulate information on the web?
Well, if it's okay, I'm going to take this a little bit different direction, but I think we're kind of going to the same place. And it's the first thing that popped into my mind when you helped me understand the question a little bit better. I'm going to suggest that one thing, not so much in terms of credibility, but to some of that, but that there are different ways of looking at the same information. And in this case, the person who asked it was a business researcher, that every story contains information. And often another reason why that you really need to look at multiple versions of the same story, meaning the way the story is reported by the New York Times very likely is not the same way. It doesn't contain all the information that's included, for example, in the story in the Washington Post. And often, I should also say, and press releases get a very bum rap in my opinion. Yes, they are controlled by the organization putting them out there. However, I can tell you this, that very often from the researcher perspective specifically, they often contain facts, information, names, contact points, that type of thing that never make it into the story if the story is reported in the first place. So especially for business information, if it's understood why the press release is happening and the issues surrounding press releases, I would not have a problem mentioning to the researcher to look for press releases on that particular story. But to go back to the original question, in my original resource I wanted to share, take a look at a source called Newsy, N-E-W-S-Y, N-E-W-I.com. This is a source based out of the based in Columbia, Missouri, using students, I believe, at some point, or new journalists from the wonderful journalism school there, is they take one story and then source it out, create a new story using multiple underlying sources. So it's a great, and provide links to the underlying sources that made the new article or the new video. So it's a great way to find multiple sources on one particular story, and also then easily understand what's in one story that didn't make it into the other story. So that's one of the resources I would take a look at. And by the way, Newsy is available at newsy.com, and they, of course, have apps as well.
All right. So there's a question, and this is going to probably be our last one. We'll see how much you've got to say on, are subject directories still relevant in the universe of information? Because unfortunately, sites like InfoMine, which, by the way, just as a complete aside, I was one of the original contributors to InfoMine and used to do the business section, and it was really sad to see that they are shutting it down. But things like InfoMine and the Internet Public Library are starting to fall by the wayside. So are there other sort of subject directories that you could point people to?
Wow, what a great question, and something that I think about quite a bit. I think perhaps the time has come where, because resources like InfoMine, like There was a great set of subject-oriented directories coming out of the UK academia. The Internet Public Library is gone. The librarians index to the Internet, for those of you who've been doing this for a long time, that merged with IPL, so that's gone. I think that the people are starting to realize that human curation in building directories is as valuable now as it ever was. We went through a period there where a lot of the people, especially the funders, thought that algorithms could do everything or a lot of things, but they still are not human curate. They're not humans, and they can't curate like humans can. No, I mean, a lot of the great directories, as the ones we've just mentioned, like InfoMain, are gone. There is one coming out of academia for business that I think is just great, and it is called globaledge.msu from Michigan State.edu. And the focus is business, and even more specifically, international business resources. This one is not only a directory, but provides a variety of additional materials. It's really a directory slash portal slash all sorts of other things. But to be quite honest with you, my hope is that subject directories or topic directories or even directories based around a specific area or interest, a topical interest, something that is in the news this week or will be in the news this week, kind of make a comeback, because I absolutely think that there is a need for them. And if anybody has any ideas of how we can start building them and finding the new resources for them, I would love to be part of it, and I'd love to do what I can. But you know, there is a huge resource element in terms of human resources going in. It takes a lot of time to not only discover the resources, do with that, but and use for that, but just to maintain it takes a lot of time and effort. But I think using discovery layers, because I really think, especially for those of you in academia, I really think discovery layers, and I've mentioned this to all of the major discovery providers, I think they really need to go to the next level in terms of not only providing links to, subscription databases, but also not trying to recreate Google, but also trying to include valuable open web resources like some of the things we've talked about today, and also primary documents. And the example I often give is if President Obama makes a speech at 12:35 on Wednesday, very likely by 1 o'clock or 1:30 the actual transcript is there, if not earlier. That should also be included in the records, in a discovery layer.
Good, Gary. So I'm afraid I'm going to have to cut you off, as much as I hate to do it, but I'm aware that we are over time. The good news is that you're going to be able to respond to any of the questions that were asked, even those that you didn't get a chance to get to. So you'll be able to send that out, or we'll be able to send that out, as well as a link to the archived recording and to the PowerPoint. So don't despair for anyone who is worried that I've cut Gary off. We'll be back with more from Gary in your email. So thank you all very much for your time and attention. And Gary, thank you so much for all your tips.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Bye, everybody.